Russian President Vladimir Putin's ambitions attempt to reclaim Ukraine as a subordinate state and push NATO away from its borders on February 24, 2022, has backfired in a remarkable way. Rather than achieving his goal, Putin's actions have inadvertently strengthened NATO and even led to the inclusion of additional countries. The question arises, why does Russia perceive Finland and Sweden's potential membership in NATO as a threat? The Russian invasion of Ukraine was largely motivated by Ukraine's refusal to submit to Kremlin authority. Following a presidential coup in 2014, Ukraine began pursuing a path towards Western integration, which included aspirations for NATO membership. This intention was even enshrined in Ukraine's constitution, with a high priority placed on meeting the necessary criteria for joining the alliance. President Putin, however, deemed such aspirations utterly unacceptable. Consequently, the prospect of Finland and Sweden aligning with NATO evokes a sense of apprehension within Russia. Throughout history, Russia has endured significant hardships caused by European invaders. From the French during the Napoleonic Wars to the Germans in both World Wars, these invasions have deeply impacted the nation. However, after the Second World War, Eastern Europe faced a substantial weakening, presenting the Soviet Union with an opportunity to expand its influence all the way to Germany. Yet, this expansion was not solely a power grab. It was a crucial matter of national security for Russia. By establishing numerous client states across Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union effectively created a protective barrier between itself and Western Europe. This buffer served as a defense mechanism, ensuring that any potential invasion would be met outside Russian territory. This strategic move saved the lives of countless Russian citizens and preserved the nation's economy. The significance of this buffer lies in Russia's vulnerable strategic position in Europe. The country is situated at the eastern end of the expansive European plain, a vast flat terrain that offers minimal natural defenses. Throughout history, Russian forces have struggled to repel invasions from the west due to the lack of advantageous geographical features. With the advent of modern high-speed warfare, the strategic outlook has become even more challenging for Russia. During World War II, the relentless German advances were slowed only by the indomitable determination of Russian defenders, who attempted to disrupt the mighty German war machine through sheer numbers. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, former client states such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia wasted no time in seeking NATO membership. For these countries, joining NATO was a matter of national survival, as they understood that the dissolution of the Soviet Union did not diminish Russia's aspirations to control Eastern Europe. The inclusion of the three Baltic states into NATO presented a difficult decision for existing members. While these states contribute relatively little to the alliance and could be seen as liabilities, their strategic location on Russia's flank holds significant importance. By incorporating Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania into NATO, a vast front was established along Russia's northwestern border, disrupting the balance of their military forces. For many years, NATO had faced the challenge of preventing a concentrated attack through the infamous Fulda Gap in Germany. The limited border between Norway and the Soviet Union offered little opportunity for NATO to pose a serious threat. Consequently, the Soviet Union could concentrate its firepower in East Germany, preparing for a decisive and brutal offensive against NATO's core. However, with the Baltic countries now part of NATO, the alliance gained the ability to direct confront Russia on its own doorstep across a broad front. This compelled the newly formed Russian Federation to disperse its forces more widely. Furthermore, the Baltic's front's unfavorable terrain made it difficult for defensive operations, necessitating even more troops to secure the region's border. Russia's strategic position is weakened by dispersing forces, risking Kaliningrad and Baltic Sea. NATO's presence threatens Russia from the south through Poland and the north through Lithuania, disrupting the balance of power in Europe. Ukraine joining NATO would further isolate Russia, flanking it and giving NATO control over the Black Sea, affecting Russian ports and trade routes. The invasion of Ukraine temporarily prevents its alignment with the European Union and NATO, but Sweden and Finland are considering joining NATO due to their troubled history with Russia, including the Soviet invasion during World War II. Historians debate Stalin's intentions regarding Finland, but evidence suggests he aimed to fully capture the country. He established a puppet Finnish communist government in occupied territories, and the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Germany ensured the Soviets didn't fear German intervention. However, Finland's resistance proved tougher than expected, due to favorable terrain. Stalin's purges of the Red Army weakened its leadership, hindering its military effectiveness. the Soviet Union gained meager territorial gains and suffered significant losses in manpower and resources. The war damaged their international standing and convinced Hitler that the Soviet Union was weak, leading to a future invasion at great cost to the Soviets. Finland and Sweden, historically neutral during the Cold War, maintained a policy of appeasing Russia by establishing bilateral relations instead of joining NATO. They cooperated with NATO forces but refrained from membership to avoid provoking Russia. However, the recent invasion of Ukraine has dramatically altered the security situation in Europe. As a result, public opinion in Finland and Sweden has shifted, with a majority now expressing a desire to join NATO for increased security. The invasion demonstrated that Russia is willing to intervene and disregard agreements if it disagrees with a country's internal affairs. Consequently, Finland and Sweden fear that their neutrality no longer guarantees security, rendering prior agreements with Russia essentially worthless. The accession of Sweden and Finland to NATO would have significant implications for Russia. It would effectively obstruct Russia's access to the Baltic Sea in the event of hostilities. With NATO members surrounding Russian ships from all directions, NATO navies would be able to operate just off Russia's coast, providing replenishment and resupply support. This means that American aircraft carriers, for example, could operate safely within the Baltic Sea for the first time in history, following a thorough clearing of the Russian Baltic Fleet by NATO vessels. For Russia, having multiple American supercarriers stationed so close to its shores would be a nightmarish scenario, as it would be for any country. The inclusion of these two Nordic countries into NATO would make this nightmare a possibility. Furthermore, Finland and Sweden joining NATO would transform the entire Nordic peninsula into a NATO stronghold, effectively surrounding Russia from two sides. NATO's air defense installations in Finland could pose a serious threat to significant parts of Russian territory, limiting the utilization of Russia's air forces in the event of a war. This would also place numerous strategically important targets within the striking range of NATO aircraft, immediately weakening Russia's defensive capabilities and hindering its ability to launch offensive operations. Of even greater concern is the fact that Finland's NATO membership would create an additional 800 miles of vulnerability for Russia, given the shared border between Finland and Russia. This would place NATO forces within a mere 60 miles of St. Petersburg, with easy access to other important Russian targets in the northern regions. While Russia might face challenges in moving a few dozen miles into enemy territory to capture a major city, NATO's swift and agile military would not encounter similar obstacles. Vladimir Putin understands this well, which is why he harbors deep apprehension about NATO establishing a significant presence in such close proximity to Russia's vulnerable territory. Considering Russia's actions in Ukraine, it is highly improbable that they would risk a war against Finland and Sweden, whose militaries are completely modernized to prevent their NATO accession. Russia currently cannot afford to engage in multiple conflicts simultaneously, and even without NATO support, the joint efforts of Finland and Sweden would impose significant costs on Russia without offering substantial political or territorial gains. Moreover, the terrain in the region favors defensive operations, making it unlikely that Russia would resort to military means to prevent the country's ascension. However, there remains the concern of a nuclear attack, as Putin is believed to possess this capability, especially given the perceived shortcomings of his military. Without NATO membership, Sweden and Finland lack the protection of the American nuclear umbrella enjoyed by other nations, rendering them vulnerable to this drastic form of intimidation.